Welcome to Q&A with Qlik. Today we're going to be talking about app development. My name's Troy Rainey, and I work putting together videos and webinars like this one. We've got an excellent expert panel for you today. Why don't we just go around the table and introduce ourselves? Ola, why don't we start with you?
Just needed to find the unmute button. Thank you. So my name is Ola Raxendal. I work as a senior technical learning consultant at Qlik. Mostly I produce enablement material for internal employees, partners, and customers. Been with Qlik for about 7 years.
Great. And Patrick?
Thank you. My name is Patrick Lundblad. I'm a lead product designer for Qlik Sense, the analytics part, the augmented part. Been here for soon 11 years, and I'm mainly involved in the design, part of my title, trying to understand what is the requirement from the users, what is the best way of incorporating into our products, what is the best way of getting pleasant user experience that makes it easy to use, but still powerful, and yeah, gives you all the options that you need.
Great. Well, we've already got some questions come in, so I'll go ahead and take them from the top. Do you have any plans to add field level triggers to Qlik Sense or Qlik View?
So I would say when it comes to Qlik View, I can't answer those questions. As I just said, I'm mainly working on Qlik Sense. In that area around triggers and things like that, the main thing we would start working with, which I can't say when, is to have it on objects. So it wouldn't be field level to begin with. It would be objects, and then depending on what you do in the objects, a trigger or an action happens, just like you have in Qlik View.
That makes sense. Okay, next question. Any plans to add option to select multiple fields at once to add to a visualization like we see in the new straight table?
So I would say my hope is yes, actually starting with the pivot table. So we released our first version of the pivot table before Christmas, so that you can actually have it as an early Christmas gift. And now we're working on a new iteration of it where we're adding in more features and functionalities. Hopefully Patrick Nordstrom has prepared his slide deck for upcoming release and so on. But we will be adding things to the pivot table such as chart exploration, where you can pivot and unpivot your data and say what's included or excluded. And at the same time, then changing the property panel so you can multi-add fields, dimensions, measures, change aggregations to it. So the new straight table already in there, the new pivot table we're working on. We'll see what happens after that. Depends on what the needs is of you as users.
That's fair. Okay, next question. Could you show how to use the container object in Qlik Cloud versus Qlik Client Managed?
So I can show you how you use it. Probably get that later when there are a couple of questions around it. But if we talk about the difference between having it on cloud, so I'm not going to show demo now, I'll demo later, because I know there are some other questions around container. But from my perspective, I don't believe there is any difference between having it on cloud or client managed other than the release cadence. On cloud, you get the latest updates, you get the newest things first, most often. On client managed, you have to wait until the release and when you upgrade to that release. So that would be the main difference around release cadence rather than anything else.
Perfect. All right, next question. What settings would you suggest for the KPI along with an image and an icon beside? So I guess if you wanted to include an image right next to the KPI object.
Yeah. So some of these questions were actually prepared before. They were part of the people signing up for this webinar. So I've had this day today preparing, and that's why I knew I was gonna actually show the layer container. See if I can have the screen.
Yeah, let me stop sharing. Go ahead.
I'll share my screen. Second. I was actually looking at another question also in there. So the layer container, so when you use the KPI, you have options like adding a background image, you have a text, you have some predefined things that you can do with it. If you want to do something outside of it, if you want to do a more, let's use the British term, bespoke or a customized KPI, I would actually more move towards using the new layout container instead. Gives you more the options of layering things, positioning them as you want, instead of trying to tweak the font sizes and the settings to fit it. So you can do things like, I have a layer container here. I have a KPI inside. You could use a text object instead. You could use bar chart or mini chart, things like that. I have a logo in here. I'm using the text and image object, and I have the logo as a background on it. So if I go up here, text and image, properties, add it in as a background image. You can also use any empty object and use it as a background image. I just like text object because then I can have that image with nothing else. And I can also do something like putting an image inside the layer container. So in this case, going to styling, saying that I want to have a background image from media library. I have a background demo image. That's not that interesting, but I can now use it in here. Original size means that I can't actually see it because it's outside the object. But I can do things like always fit. Then it's going to put on the sides or on the top, so the extra spacing in there. In this case, that might be good if you have a logo or something like that. What I have here is just an image that should work when I'm stretching it. So in this case, I'm actually going to just stretch it. And now I have a bit of a custom KPI with something on the side, an indicator, color to indicate what the measure might be around. I have the logo, I have the KPI. I can freely resize it. I can have either a static font sizes, or I can have responsive font sizes and things like that. So if you're not happy with what the KPI can give you, I think another option would be using the layer container and any object we have in our product or any extension you're using inside there to create that more custom look and feel.
That looks great.
Yeah. It was a very quick demo. You can spend a lot more time making it more nice.
Definitely. Well, we got a lot of questions, so we'll move on. Any plans to add layout conditions to objects for the new layout container so objects can be shown and hidden rather than just layered behind while still technically there?
Actually, let me grab the ball again since I have this one. So we already have a show condition inside the layout container. So this is one of those questions I was asked before. So I don't know if the author of the question is here and can clarify it if I'm missing something. But if you go to an object in the layer container, the text image, the KPI object, there is a show condition. If I set it to false or 0, then it's hidden. I believe it's not calculated, so it's not being used. And if you've been to LinkedIn or YouTube, you can see many of the people using our new layer container actually adding in hundreds of objects in there, creating that video game gallery with show and hide conditions. So I think that's what you're asking for. And then it's available in layer container as a show condition per object. Once we actually, so the idea in the future is I will take this layer container and we'll put that option on top of the sheet instead. So you don't have to be forced to use the grid we have today. So then in the future, you would see all the objects on the sheet. You would freely position them, have them on top of each other, and each object would have a show condition. But right now, if you want to show hide, you need to put it into a layer container or the normal container if you use show and hide tabs instead.
Thanks for demoing that. All right, next question. How can you change the text color in a pivot table based on conditions?
Well, there is an option under the dimensions. So in the right bar under dimensions, there is something where you can set both the color expression on text, but also the color expression on the field, or the background value as well.
Great, thanks. Okay, next question. How to capture bookmark IDs from a published Qlik Sense dashboard?
So I can take this one. I think it depends on if you're on client managed or on cloud.
Okay.
If it's client managed, I think you could use the Dev Hub or you could use the single engine API to find out what are the bookmarks in there and what are their IDs. If you're on cloud, I'll show you quickly them. So we just got this question. I haven't thought that much about it. So the first thing I would say is that if you have a bookmark and if you're allowed to publish it, so if you have the copy link option, but in order to use it, you need to publish it. But if you copy the link and the bookmark is published, then within the link in here, the bookmark ID is part of the string or the URL. But I can't actually right now think of any way of doing it for a private bookmark. There might be something, but yeah, not something that I've tried before, so I wouldn't be able to say more than that.
Okay, but the ID
I could
is,
add an
yeah,
addition there as well. It's possible to access the bookmarks from automations as well. So
okay.
if you're trying to automate something, you could capture the book rate. I'm unsure on private bookmarks there, but I know, as you said, Patrick, they can get the public bookmarks as well, and then either use them in automation or get them from there.
Awesome. Okay, next question. I don't know if you guys are able to answer this, but we're using inprinting 16 and would like to know if the new version supports the same functionality. I would point people towards
Uh,
the release notes, but do you have a better
yeah,
response?
I can answer that both the yes and no. So if you're using inprinting, I assume that you're either on QlikView or Qlik Sense on-prem, and we did do a large upgrade when we moved to inprinting 17. So I know that we've added functionality afterwards, and as you said there, I'd go to the release notes, but uh, no, they're not the same. But we do think that we've captured the key functionality with them.
Great, thank you. Is there an option to request future functionality, and where can we find that? I was prepared for a question like that. Let me just share my desktop. On Qlik Community, there is a forum called Ideation, and this is excellent. People can suggest customers, partners, anyone can come in here and suggest ideas for feature requests or improvements to any of our products. And you can see the suggestions that have already been submitted and upvote them. And our product team definitely takes this into consideration when it's time to introduce new functionality and new innovations. So please check out Qlik Ideation on Qlik Community, and I'll be sure to include that link. Uh, Next question, is there a public Qlik? Not quite sure if what they mean by that. Maybe something like Qlik
There
Sense
is
Desktop or
There is a trial version of Qlik,
yeah.
but I know that many years ago we used to have very basic version that was for personal use only. We do not have that anymore.
But yeah, there's a trial version of Qlik Cloud, right?
Yeah.
Like for personal use. And once you get into Qlik Cloud, you can actually still download Qlik Sense Desktop. So you have a bit of an on-prem development tool. Hopefully that helps answer your question. Next one. Are there any video resources that show how to create a custom REST connector connection to Google My Business, as well as the Facebook connection and Google Analytics? It's a very good question. I feel like I've seen demos and even been a part of creating REST connections, but I can't think of them off the top of my head. Uh,
It used to be an app, maybe if you Google on it to
yeah.
try to find it. There was an app for a connection to, I think it was Twitter back in the day at least,
Okay.
for Qlik Sense on-prem. I haven't seen anywhere, but maybe it's on Qlik Community if it's anywhere.
Yeah. So I apologize for not having a more direct link to provide you, but I think Google is your best resource there to just type in REST connector demo and see what you can find. Next question. Why Qlik Sense Cloud feature is not available for on-prem versions? That's a fair question.
So I would say many of the features we're looking at, we talk about subscription, we talk about automation, we talk about AutoML, all requires a pretty big and robust backend when it comes to microservices, different services. We're using a lot of cloud specific things, which it makes it really hard taking that from the cloud and put it on-prem without requiring pretty big server investment and maintenance and so on. So scalability and things like that is one of the main reasons. But I think that's also interesting topic for another webinar. Not
Yeah,
something I can help.
Yeah.
sure.
I think in addition to that as well is that we're seeing a lot of hybrid solutions as well, where the functionalities that aren't on-prem, we see customers using the cloud for those specific instances, like AutoML, for example. Those solutions are out there as well.
Great. Next question, how do we access the Qlik community and blog if it exists? So Qlik community, you can get to it at community.qlik.com. And there are several blogs on here that I would recommend, especially if you're into app design and development. There's the design blog. It's a great resource for getting ideas and seeing what's available out there. There's also the product innovation blog if you're into new features and new capabilities. Those are two really great blogs. There's also the support updates blog. And I had the tab somewhere. The app development forum. If you have any specific questions or issues you're having, trying to get some feedback or support on, feel free to come in here and search to see if anybody else has had the same question or post your questions. There's a very large community of clickies out there that are eager to help. And we also have several employees that are constantly monitoring this blog as well. So there's a lot of resources there to check out. Next question. Can you please provide some insight on Qlik to PowerPoint export? So how can we export to PowerPoint?
There is the story telling function. Just slipped on the name of it, but where you can create a presentation or within a PowerPoint-esque way, where you can put visualization snapshots of visualizations throughout your application, and then add some text to that as well, and then that's exportable to PowerPoint, although there isn't a live connection between the PowerPoint export and the Qlik application, of course. But I think that's one of the easiest way to do it.
Definitely. Okay, next question. How do backups work with Qlik Cloud? Yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah.
That's kind of one of the advantages of running on Qlik Cloud is that we take care of all that back-end infrastructure for you. But if anything would happen to disappear, you guys have any suggestions on what they can do?
We can talk about actually what's in the product and what may or may not be coming. So one of the things we have in the product, I believe since this fall, when it comes to cloud, is versioning when it comes to your load script. So you can actually have multiple people working if an app is in a shared space or private space, but then you're probably alone. But then when you're working in there and you have your section you're working on, that is actually being versioned, and you can see the different version histories, and you can go back to an earlier version. If some of your colleagues removed something, or if you happen to press the wrong button and so on. Looking into the future, I'm hoping we'll get the same thing when it comes to sheets. So you actually have multiple people working in the same app, not having to actually make a sheet private, public, things like that, but actually just being able to lock a sheet, make changes to it, unlock it. The lock, of course, goes away if you spend too long to it, but not doing anything. And then versioning would be part of that. But for pure backup, if you think it's, we have the cloud, we're doing backups there. If you want to have something extra, then I think it's using automation or using an external solution. That would be my thoughts.
Yeah, just to add on the automation part there, we have automation templates for exporting applications. That's applications, both the visual side and the script, and also actual automations themselves to platforms like GitHub. So that's also something that's available out of the box, cloud version.
And kind of a follow-up to that, the next question was, are there any plans for version control with Qlik Sense apps?
So as I said, version control is there on cloud when it comes to the script, and hopefully, maybe in the future for sheets, for the dashboards, the objects, and so also.
Yeah, I know that. I feel like I saw a demo of app automation being able to help
Yep.
with that as well.
Yep.
Yeah, so there's a
Yeah,
lot of
there
resources
are
out there actually.
there is if you go to Qlik Learning, the learning portal, I know that there is some videos on automations there where we use export to GitHub, import
That's
the
right.
application
Thank you
again.
for that. Yeah, GitHub. All right. Do you have any plans to make an option for straight tables to be horizontal in Qlik Sense as they are in Qlik View?
Not that I know of. I would be using the pivot table then instead, and just making certain that yeah, you swap the axis, what is columns, what is rows, that way.
Okay. Uh, Next question. How can a Qlik View based inprinting report migrated to Qlik Sense without much manual change? All right.
It's,
There's a lot,
is it
lot
Qlik
to unpack there.
Sense? Yeah, Qlik Sense on-prem
I'm
must be
assuming, so
the
if they're still
platform.
using
Yeah,
inprinting, yeah.
yeah, exactly. I need to refer to community or one of those resources to see if there's a migration tool in place. I always recommend taking the opportunity when it's time to migrate from one platform to another to look if there are any way to rework and make your reports more efficient as well. So maybe taking the opportunity to go in and create it from scratch. But if there are any migration tools, probably reference those on Qlik Community.
Next question. Any chance to have a Gantt view as a graphical object available?
So Gantt as its own object, it's not available now. I believe you showed how to request it or put
Yeah,
it on the wish list. I believe Patrick Nordstrom might have some for his tips and tricks, if you
yeah,
have a link for that.
he's definitely demoed how to build a Gantt chart out of what was it, a bar chart or something?
Yeah, a bar chart where you use opacity to hide a stack bar chart where you use opacity to hide some of the segments. So that would be the way to work it. And that's Patrick Nordstrom has done it for his tips and tricks. I don't know which one of them, but they're all available on Qlik Community.
I'll try and find the link to that and share it along with this recording. Next question. Can data visualizations be created from a shared drive? You can definitely load data from a shared drive. There's lots of connectors available to be able to connect to your shared files and even on-prem locations. Yeah, I don't know if you have anything to add to that, or I can just move on.
Yeah.
Next question, how to gain access to ESG add-on, or how does that work? I'm not familiar with what ESG add-on is. What are we talking about? Do you guys know? Recognize that acronym?
No.
All right, I apologize. Let's see if we can get some loop back around to that one. Does Qlik allow automation of workflows? Oh boy, does it ever. Who wants to talk about application automation?
Yeah, I can do application automation. Yes, we do in the cloud product have an out-of-the-box application automation functionality where we allow automation of workflows. Example of workflows that are commonly automated is reload, multiple reload tasks where you reload applications in a sequential order, for example, exporting and importing apps to GitHub, as we talked about before. And the application automation product works both with the internal Qlik Cloud environment, but also through a very rich API to other platforms as well. It is a product that has a tier when it comes to what you're allowed to do with it out of the box. So automating reloads, for example, that's included in the product. But then if you hit a certain amount of reloads for external APIs and so on, there is an extra added on cost for that. There's a lot of good material out there on automations, on Qlik Learning, on Qlik Community, and there's soon going to come a new course as well on Qlik Learning, which will kind of allow you to play around with it a little bit inside of the environment. So
Great.
yes.
Next question. In Qlik Cloud, we have performance evaluation of apps. Will we get similar in Qlik Enterprise soon? There's a lot of apps out there, actually. Do you guys have any off the top of your head what would be a good performance evaluator of apps? It's on the tip of my tongue right now. I can't.
So
There are some. Sorry. You go, Patrick.
I can say I know of one, which is the QSDA, I believe it is, by Rob Wunderlich. Qlik Sense performance analyzer or something like that. That's available. In cloud, we have the built-in app analyzer you can use by just right-clicking the app in the hub, looking
Right,
at
the app
what takes
analyzer.
calculation. Yeah.
Yeah, that's one I was thinking of. What did you want to share something?
Yeah, there are a couple of monitoring applications that are available for Qlik Sense on-prem as well. When you install the product, two are automatically installed, but there are a couple of more that are available where you can go down both on an app level and monitor and look at the performance there, but also monitor environment, tasks, and so on. So those are available. They easy to install for no extra cost.
Great. Do you plan for pivot tables to have the tooltip enabled in Qlik Sense?
So yes, we plan for it. I can't say when it will happen, but we have a lot of ideas around the new pivot table and improvements we can make to it. So while we've been chatting here, I've been typing answers to some of these questions. So I thought I'd just do a demo and just show some of the things when it comes to the new pivot table, if that's okay.
Great. Yeah.
And Ola can start having some questions if he wants. We got a little bit more people than I think we're expected today. So
Which is great. These are great questions so far. So
Yep.
keep them coming. We'll answer as many as we can.
So when it comes to the old pivot table, there are some columns that you can adjust, mainly this divider between what is the rows and what is the columns. So if I add in here to this pivot table, if I add in one more, so for example, the name of the car, let's do it fully expanded. Then in the old pivot table, let's actually not indent the rows. In the old pivot table, you are only able to adjust the rows, and you have to do it by going into analysis mode, making the changes to it, open up the edit button, clicking apply. Now we're saving the width here in pixels. So that's what's available in the old pivot table. If we go into the new pivot table, it's available in the visualization bundle. I think it's from the February release this year for client manage. It's been in cloud since, as I said, slightly before Christmas. So you have the new pivot table in here. So let me just convert it to new pivot table. And just like the old pivot table, you can go in here and you can adjust the size in pixels for these areas, but you can also do it for in here. We don't do actually a live update here when you drag it. Came a little bit too flickering and so on, but I can make it larger or smaller in here for the columns also, mainly for the bottom rows when it comes to columns. But you can also go into the new pivot table and you can go into the different dimensions, measures, or the 7-dimension. And you can go in here and you can see that we have a column width option that is either in auto, we base it on the data we have in the column, or actually auto, we split it by the screen size, how many columns you have. Fit to content, what is the width of your data? That might mean that you have empty space on the side. Pixels or percentages. Do you want it to be 25% per column and things like that? So here you can go in, you can either put in a manual value, you can use an expression to calculate how many percentage it should be. So new pivot table opens up a lot more options when it comes to the amount of pixels or percentages for your different columns.
Fantastic. Yeah, I feel like you hit a lot of different questions there, or several questions around pivot table and possibilities there. There's a question about creating a live report.
So the question is, what do you mean with a live report?
Yeah.
I mean, we can do really quick reloads. We can have a reload schedule. I mean, when I talk to customers and users, some think a live report is having the data loaded every week. Something is about having the data loaded every day. Something you'll think is every hour, every 5 minutes. That depends on what your definition of live is. If you want to have truly live, where you go for the chart actually goes to the source data, we have I think it's called the direct query, where you can create a direct query app, for example, towards Snowflake or any other database. And then you can create some of those visualizations, and they will be querying the database live for that dashboard. So looking towards direct query as the solution for that. If you're talking truly live, going to the source data without any reload.
Okay. Next question, is there an introductory training available for new Qlik users?
Yes, go to Qlik Learning. Once again, there are a couple of pathways depending which type of user you are. If you are just or not just, if you're a regular Qlik user using the application for analytics, that's focused more on how to actually interact with the application. And then there's a path as well if you create applications, the visual part of it, and also if you create the script, so the backend, the data loading part. So that's available there.
A lot of those introductory courses are free as well. That was a bit of a follow-up I forgot to read. That are those available for free?
Yeah, they're available for free. And then if you want to go more in depth, there'll be there are subscription options.
And while we're on that subject, a question came up looking for how to use maps in Qlik. And I believe there's a course in Qlik Learning on map objects. Is there?
Yeah, so when you look for information on maps, you should have the word geoanalytics in your backend as well, because that's part of the map functionality. So if you're having problem finding information on maps, you could always try geoanalytics as well. We'll get some more information on that.
Great, thank you. Next question. How can we calculate memory consumption in Qlik Cloud? Are there any consumption regarding the number of users that are using the app? I guess they're concerned about performance in Qlik Cloud.
I would refer to the monitoring applications that are available.
Yeah. And the performance is a bit dynamic. So if more users do hop on, it's built to meet that demand. And if you have any heavy apps, like the actual size of the app is extremely large, there are some thresholds that perhaps might price you up a different level, but there are a lot of capabilities to meet those demands. So I guess it's good to be aware of, but it's all kind of taken care of in the back end. Our next question. How do performance evaluation visuals to know which elements take time to load? I guess the same kind of question.
So I would say, talking from my experience, it is rarely the rendering of the visualization that takes time. It is the calculation. So using any of those tools for checking how long a calculation takes would give the most performance improvement. The actual rendering of the chart is very fast compared to other things.
Great. Next question. When the native write-back solution will be available for Qlik Sense Enterprise? I'm not that familiar with that.
So native write-back, not being able to, I can't answer that area. I believe you can use automation to do write-back to source system zones. I've seen people using the button object, variable input form, being able to click a button and running an automation to write back to the source and so on. But yeah.
Is there a scheduled subscription to email or file transfer? I didn't quite understand that one.
So you can have on cloud, you can have scheduled subscription for emails, for example. File transfer, I mean, with automations, you can probably do most of those things.
Great.
Yeah, exactly. Automations is the way to go there.
Great. We're working through these. We develop apps on cloud and deploy to QAP client managed server. Would we have an issue with the layout container? Any considerations we should be aware of?
Not that I can think of. The layer container is responsive. We use pixels for width, height, X and Y position. We have looked into using pixels also. That may or may not be coming. So I would say, just like any chart, make it really small. Of course, every content in there would not be as readable, making it larger, more readable, and so on.
Off the top of
But
your head, do you remember when
otherwise,
that new layout container became available in Qlik Sense on-prem?
Qlik Sense on-prem was in the February release this year, I believe.
Okay. So just make sure you're on that release or newer,
Yeah.
and you should be good.
Yeah, if you develop on cloud, if you put the app on-prem, you're not using a version that has released that container, an error pop message will be in there instead saying that the visualization type layer container cannot be found on the server.
That's good to be aware of.
Yeah.
Can Qlik be used to create an analytics platform with dashboards for nursing performance metrics? I would say definitely. We've got a lot of medical field demo apps available on demos.qlik.com if you want to take a look at what's possible. Next question. In order to increase the user's selection capacity, would it be possible to implement an import-export module with different options? Import, for example, an Excel or CSV file with selections of what the user wanted to select. Of course, it is at the user's discretion to be careful in the selections. That was a mouthful. I'm trying to wrap my head around what they're.
So I think they want to have a dashboard where a user uploads their own data and they get something filled in for that. I mean, using APIs, anything is possible out of the box. Using it with inside a dashboard, not that I know of.
Okay. But that's a good question.
Yeah.
I think this was a follow-up to something that came in earlier. I know I can set up the chain of op1 and op2 and so on in order to set up other options. I've lost track of the context of that. I'll move on. I need to know if it's possible to connect Qlik to Big Query using Qlik version 2022 via web browser. I tried but couldn't. Using Qlik 2023 app, it worked. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'd refer to support in that case. Seems.
Yeah, and I come from support, and we would probably say you've already found your solution, unfortunately. But it's always good to check the release notes to see what's capable of the version that you're actually running. Let's see if that is available. And it could have been that maybe they had some issues in the version that you're running. So when in doubt, always double check the release notes. And those are version specific. Qlik Sense client managed. I'd like to create a line chart with two y-axes, one for absolute value, the other for percentage. How can I do that?
Yay. So let's, so depending on what type of line chart you have, let's do a demo again.
Awesome.
I think just seeing us answering questions might be boring towards them. So you don't actually want to use the line chart object for this. You have to use the combo chart if you want to have two axes. So in this case here, I can add, for example, the dimension should be years. And then I can add here, I can add in a measure such as average horsepower. It puts in as bars to begin with. If you open up the measure, you can go in and pick the more properties, and then you can switch it to a line. And then if you add in one more, for example, let's do the average horsepower again. Let's break this one. And then you can go in here and use the modifiers, and then I think you can do as relative numbers. And then I think it's respect dimension. yeah, you have some options in here for using percentages that you can calculate. I'm not certain exactly why. Yeah, in here. So now you have one axis absolute value, one axis with percentages. Of course, being the same measure, it's the absolute value and the percentage is going to be the same here. You can sadly not add in 2 dimensions in here, so you would have to add in, if you have a dimension with a couple of values like continents or something like that, you would have to use set expression and adding 1 measure for every continent that you're doing. And while we're here, we have the next question. Are there any plans to have functionality to be able to click on a bespoke visualization and there be sort of analysis tool that creates live commentary / text to compare it to the sheet to enhance the insights? We do have an NL Insight object today that I can add in here to the sheet. And then I can pick and add the chart, and I can pick any of the charts that I have on the sheet in here. So I haven't put a name on this object. That's why it's the ID of the object, and it says combo chart. But if I go up in here and I say my combo chart, then when I click on add chart down here, you'll see my combo chart as an option. And then when I click here, I've linked this NL Insight object. Okay, it's too little data, but had there been more data in here, we would have put out some insights for that one. Let's see if there's... That was Siri saying hello to me. Let's see if we have a table in here, for example. This is a details table with a little bit more data. Let's switch so that it's not that chart. Let's use the details table. Hopefully this works. Of course, I'm unlucky today with a demo. So you could do this for click one chart, connect it to the NL Insights, see what type of insights have been found for it. If you want to have multiple ones, I would use the tab container, and I would hide and show the different tabs, and I would have a button next to every chart and say click view insights, and that NL object would then be visible inside the tab container. It's a little bit more of setup if you want to have it per chart, but you already know that which charts you want to have description for. You can add this object in here, and hopefully you're slightly more lucky than I am right now. That's with the live demos and questions.
Yeah. Oh, I appreciate you
Yeah.
demoing. We are developing dashboards using only layout container. My question is regarding performance. Should we see major performance and rendering hits using layout container as the main element versus the normal way?
I don't think you see any real difference other than you can probably add in a lot more objects into a layout container than you can on a sheet. I think a sheet is limited by the grid. Layout container, I don't actually think we put in a limit. So if you want to have 1,000 objects in there, feel free to do that. I don't believe there's any extra performance. Not that I can think of now.
Great. I'm trying to set up email notification settings in Qlik Cloud settings page. I've struggled with it and was told by our IT department that it will not work with our company's Outlook setup. Essentially, entering a username and password with Qlik to access the SMTP server is not secure enough, and Outlook will not allow it. I realize there are some changes. I'll finish the question. I also found online other Qlik Cloud customers facing the same issue. Is there a workaround for this, or what does Qlik suggest? I personally ran into this myself, setting up a Qlik Cloud tenant to connect to an SMTP server, and I found that Microsoft and I think Gmail or Google has recently made changes to their SMTP servers to require more strict authentication, and basic username and password doesn't work that well anymore. There are some workarounds, and there is an article in our support knowledge base on Qlik Community, and I'll try and search for that and find it in a moment. So it is a known issue. It is relative to Microsoft and Google if you face it on Google, but I believe there is a workaround. So I'll try and find the link to that. Next question. I would like to know if a connection created within a space can be used by applications from another space. Should projects that use the same connections be in the same space? That's always a good question that comes up. So can data connections in one space be used by apps in another?
I believe so. I believe that's part of the security, that you can have one group, one space for a certain amount of users and another space for another. And you can actually have your connections inside one space and being used by others. So I believe so, but I haven't done it myself.
It all comes down to permissions, I think.
Yeah.
So it's good to check that the users trying to access it have permissions to the data
Yeah.
source.
Exactly. And some data connections, if you're having problems seeing them, it could be that they're user connected to a user, not to space as well. So something to check.
Great. Layout in terms of the company or institution colors, is it a must to use this or just how the developer understands data?
If we talk about company branding, I think it's up to the company you work for if you're forced to use the company brand color or not in your dashboards, or if you have other colors that are of use. I would say the best thing is to have maybe not use the brand colors, because sometimes those brand colors are not perfect for visualizing data, but at least have a couple of colors that you and your colleagues have decided upon, so that all the dashboards are using similar colors for similar things. Like, what is the primary color? Is it green to indicate that this is the important value? What is the color for warning? What is the color for something bad? Things like that. But which colors you use, very much up to where you work and what the requirements are.
Yeah. And you can always implement background images or watermarks if you would like to add something. Next question. Will there be a solution for showing of HTML formatted text inside Qlik Sense objects, like table cells within table objects or pivot tables, when source data is HTML enriched text? I guess it could be like a pop-up, maybe.
Solution, not that I can say anything about. We do know that there is a requirement. I'll come back to the Qlik Innovation blog. Some of the other questions I've seen here are also asking for a certain feature or functionality. Do use the Qlik Innovation blog. Do see if the ID is already in there, and if so, give it a thumbs up. Also, give it a comment if you can, maybe expanding on the use case, telling us a little bit more about what it is you want to do and why. And if the idea doesn't exist, make certain that you actually add it in there, and feel free to talk about it on community and getting other people involved in it and so on. We do look at the innovation. We do take that as part of our roadmap to see what we want to add to the product and how.
Great. Next question, how to hide certain sheets to certain users? For example, don't want to show all the sheets to certain users. We're discussing the on-premise version.
So we have a show hide condition on the sheets where you can either use a variable, and of course you're going to have to use buttons, and the user clicks on a button and then the variable is set to what type of user are. If you want to look at who the user is, you're going to have to use section access to find out what type of group they're in, what they're allowed to see, or what you want to present to them or not. And then you can use the show hide condition so that depending on your section access group, you will hide and show certain sheets. But we can't say that a certain user has a certain sheet. It has to be connected to the data, therefore the section access part.
I think that when I was out building applications for customers, our recommendation was usually that if you have groups that need to see different parts of an application, rather look at publishing two different versions of that application if you want to go into the sheet level and look at that, because otherwise it'll become very messy quite quick with both section access and all the other stuff that Patrick was talking about.
Thank you. Okay, how to replace the default selection of a field given in actions with the selection from a previous sheet while navigating to the sheet?
So normally in Qlik Sense, when you do a selection, you don't do it per chart, you don't do it per sheet. It is a global thing. So if you navigate from one sheet to another sheet, it should be the same. Then the question is, if you, for example, have a trigger or something or an action that overwrites it, then, I mean, you can add an action to do a certain selection on a sheet. I don't know if you can do an action to do a certain selection while still keeping the user selection or not. I think it depends on how you set up your app and the fields and things like that. But normally a selection carries over from one sheet to another.
Yeah. How to update existing bookmark every day with the current date?
Yay, one of my favorite topics. So I'll share my screen again. So normally when you do a selection on a bookmark here, for example, I have some couple of cars and I have it by year. It's one of my favorite data sets. That's why I always use it. If I do a selection here on 1982, if I go up here and I click the new bookmark and I say demo bookmark, create, and then I click on OK. If I click the information button here, you will see here that there is a set expression that says year is 1982. Let's click on it. So that means that it is a static bookmark. That's one of the where you have to go in and update it every day. You can use the replace selection. What you can also do is you can go in here and you can add a filter pane, a table or something like that, which you feel that you want to use. You type in, I have a cheat sheet down here on the left, equals the field that you want to do your selection in, equals, because in the first is because it's something that needs to be evaluated. So it's an expression, search expression. And then equals, and then you can have in your expression function. In this case, I want to find the maximum of all years. And this is the important part. If I click this value and click OK, I'm still doing a static selection. If I click the Enter button and then click the Close button, now I actually done a dynamic selection. So if I go in here and I say Demo Dynamic Selection, and I create it, now if I click on it OK here, and if I open it up, you can see it's actually the expression that is in here within a bookmark. So compare that to having the value part of the bookmark and having the expression. This means that whenever I reload the data, there's a new day, there's a new year or something like that, there's a new car, then it will select the latest value within that field. So that's a dynamic bookmark compared to a static bookmark.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
When using a master calendar in combination with section access, should it be possible to ignore the section access applied on the master calendar? Not quite sure how the calendar works in combination with section access.
So section access sets row and column level security on the data model itself. So it depends a little bit on how the data model is set up. But if the data model, the associations are set up in such a way that there is an association which you're not allowed to view because you're not allowed to view that column or view that row, you won't be able to see that data.
Great, thank you. And these are all great questions. We're getting close to the top of the hour. We'll answer as many as we can. Is it possible to track actual users that look at certain sheets within an app and not the app as a whole? So sheet level auditing.
Yeah, through monitoring applications. It depends which platform, but if we're Qlik Sense on-prem, for example, you can view that through the monitoring applications we've talked about before. You can view exactly which users access which sheets, which objects on those sheets, so on.
Great. Next question. What is the best sheet size under custom width and height as in pixels?
So that depends on your users. I'm, of course, always using a high screen resolution, 1920, 1200 something. Maybe some of your users are on laptops with a smaller screen size, 1280 or something. So it depends on what they're using. The main thing to think about, which is a bit tricky, is that the screen size you're putting in there is not the screen size of the entire Sense product. It is the screen size of the sheet. So you have to account for, do you have a sub bar enabled or not? Do you have a top bar, or are you embedding it? Does the user have a bookmarks bar in their web browser? And things like that. So I would say the screen resolution that is most commonly used, and then doing it down on the height slightly so that you don't get the scroll bars.
That's a good tip. Next question. Can we create a square pie chart? It should take 2 dimensions, and inside the squares, it has to show 2 different measures.
I think, and I'm probably not going to have the time to test it now, but we have in the custom objects in visualization bundle, We have a grid chart.
Ooh,
Actually, I can quickly just share my screen. I can add 2 dimensions to it. I can add country. I can add year. I can add a measure average horsepower. Of course, I have a selection up here. Let's ignore that. So I'm not getting a square pie chart, and I don't have 2 values in here. But I can change the presentation now to be, let's see, layout should be a heat map instead. And then I can do, so you had 2 values on each side, 2 values on each side here. So I think you could do something like this, then you would have to rescale it. If you want to add in 2 measures, you're going to have to use the dual option to get 2 measures in there and so on. I would say that's the closest I can think of that works right now, but there may be other ways of doing it also. Or you can use a tree map, as someone just said in the chat. Tree map, then it doesn't actually put, if you make them equally size, then you can use a tree map with 2 by 2, yes.
that's great. Is it possible to specify column width in a pivot table?
I think I answered that. You can do for the new pivot table that is in the visualization bundle released on cloud before Christmas and client managed on-prem in February. So yeah.
Great. And do you guys see any questions that you feel like you've got a
I
burning
have
answer
one that's
for?
interesting, which is any plans to offer folder organization options for sheets and bookmarks? Yes, I'm hoping so. It's something we're looking into, being able to have groups for sheets, so you don't have just a list of sheets.
Great. And see if we can squeeze in one more. Will there be a solution for a date slider filter, not variable input, with 2 nodes for start date and end date, which makes it easy for users to find the date range?
Also something we have on the roadmap. I'll come back to go to Qlik Innovation blog. You'll probably find that as an idea in there. I'm pretty certain. Make certain to give it a thumbs up. That makes it come higher up on the roadmap.
Great. We've got lots of questions, but we're nearing the top of the hour. And I appreciate all the wonderful questions. And thank you so much to our expert panel, Ola and Patrick. I appreciate you guys working through this. We got through a lot of questions, and I realize there were a lot we didn't get to, but I hope you stay engaged. And if you have further questions, there's always the app development forum is a great resource, so you can post questions and hopefully get some answers there as well. Hope everyone has a great rest of the day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.